The character of Jim Hopper in Stranger Things is a man built like a fortress. From the moment we meet him, he is a silhouette of solitude, a hulking figure moving through the rainy streets of Hawkins in a beat-up blazer, a man who seems more comfortable with the silence of his empty cabin than with the noise of other people. This gruff exterior, the perpetual scowl, the short temper, the chain smoking, the dismissive grunts, is not who he truly is at its core. Instead, it is a carefully constructed and heavily fortified defense mechanism. A wall of weathered brick and barbed wire he has spent years building to protect a heart that has been shattered. To understand Hopper is to understand that every snapped word, every bottle of liquor poured alone at night, every refusal to engage is not a sign of a cold man, but the action of a man who feels too much, who has loved and lost so profoundly that the mere idea of connection feels like a terrifying risk. His story is one of a man who chose to become an island, not because he liked the solitude, but because the pain of losing the mainland was too great to bear again. The foundation of Hopper's walls is laid in tragedy, in the loss of his daughter, Sara, to cancer. This event is the central, defining earthquake of his life. It shattered his world, his marriage, and his belief in a safe and orderly universe. The Jim Hopper before that loss was a different man, a father seen in gentle, home movie flashbacks, smiling, playful, full of light. That man was buried with his daughter. The pain of that loss is so immense, so all-consuming, that Hopper does the only thing he can to survive: he numbs himself. He builds his defenses from easily accessible materials, alcohol to fog the memories, work to consume the hours, and a deliberately abrasive personality to keep everyone at a safe distance. If you don't let anyone in, you can't lose anyone. It's a simple, brutal math. His job as police chief becomes a perfect cover. He can interact with the town through a lens of duty and mild irritation, barking at citizens about stolen lawn gnomes or speeding tickets, maintaining a connection to the community that is purely transactional. This role allows him to be present but not vulnerable, involved but not attached. The chaos of others becomes a distraction from the chaos inside his own head. We see this defense system in full operation in his earliest interactions with Joyce Byers when her son, Will, goes missing. Hopper approaches the case initially with a cynical, almost lazy professionalism, assuming it's a runaway kid. When Joyce's frantic, intuitive mother's love pushes against his bureaucratic approach, he meets her with dismissiveness and annoyance. He isn't just being a bad cop, he is actively resisting her emotional pull. Her raw, open fear is a direct threat to his numb equilibrium. To take her terror seriously would be to acknowledge a world where terrible, inexplicable things happen to children, a truth his entire being is dedicated to denying because he has already lived it. Similarly, his early dealings with Eleven are a masterclass in defensive gruffness. Here is a lost, scared, profoundly powerful child, a living symbol of the unnatural horrors he is uncovering. Yet, he initially treats her with a mix of skepticism and impatience, seeing her first as a clue or a problem to be solved, not as a person to be protected. It's safer that way. Getting emotionally invested in a child again is the single most dangerous thing he could possibly do. The fascinating journey of Hopper is the slow, painful, and often reluctant dismantling of these self-made walls. The cracks begin to show almost against his will. It starts with the investigation itself. The weirdness of the Will Byers case, the lights, the sounds, the government conspiracies, forces him to confront a reality where the rules have changed. More importantly, it forces him to work alongside people. He cannot solve this mystery alone. He needs Joyce's stubbornness, he needs the kid's weird science, and he needs to protect Eleven. The fortress begins to show structural weaknesses. We see the first major breach in quiet, private moments, him sitting on his couch, looking at a photo of Sara, his face collapsing into grief he shows to no one. The scowl is gone, replaced by pure, unguarded agony. These moments prove the emotion is all still there, simmering beneath the surface, held back by a dam that is starting to leak. The true dismantling crew, however, are Eleven and, eventually, Joyce. With Eleven, Hopper is presented with a second chance he never asked for and is terrified to accept. His shift from seeing her as an asset to seeing her as a child is achingly slow. He builds a prison of a home for her in his cabin, rules born of fear rather than cruelty. But in feeding her, in teaching her simple words, in sitting silently with her watching TV, the armor begins to feel heavy and unnecessary. He starts to perform acts of care not out of obligation, but out of a reawakening paternal instinct. The scene where he bandages her injured leg, his hands gentle, his voice low and soft, is a silent surrender. The wall has been scaled, and he is on the other side, now fiercely protective not out of a sense of duty, but out of love. This love is tested horrifically when he loses her too, sacrificing her to close the gate. The old Hopper would have used this loss as proof that connection always ends in pain, retreating deeper into bitterness. But the new Hopper, the one whose defenses have been partially lowered, channels that pain into a different kind of protection. He becomes the legal guardian of the Byers boys, a silent, grumpy sentinel for the entire group of kids. He is learning that love doesn't vanish with loss. It transforms into a lasting, if quieter, commitment. His connection with Joyce is the parallel track to his healing. They are two broken mirrors reflecting each other's pain. Their dynamic is a dance of push and pull, where his gruffness meets her neurotic intensity. They snip and argue because they see their own trauma in the other, and it's uncomfortable. Yet, through every supernatural crisis, they become partners. They rely on each other. The trust builds in shared looks of exasperation, in silent agreements, in the absolute certainty that when the world ends, the other will be there. His love for Joyce isn't a sudden romantic flourish, it is a slow recognition of a fellow survivor. It is the final stage of letting his guard down, allowing himself to be vulnerable with an equal, to imagine a future that isn't just about surviving the past. By the time he writes his heartfelt, vulnerable letter to 11 about growing up and change and caring for others, the transformation is complete. The man who once communicated in grunts is now eloquently articulating his fears and his love, a testament to a heart that is no longer barricaded but carefully, bravely, open. In the end, Jim Hopper's gruff exterior was never a true portrait of the man. It was a costume, a uniform he wore for a war against his own grief. Each cigarette was a small signal flare of his internal distress, each barked order an attempt to control a world that had proven uncontrollable. His journey from a lonely chief in a quiet town to a warrior for a makeshift family is the story of that armor being chipped away, piece by painful piece, by the relentless, stubborn force of human connection. He teaches us that strength isn't found in the hardness of our shells, but in the courage to finally, cautiously, step out from behind them. He is a hero not because he was fearless, but because he was absolutely terrified of loving again, and he chose to do it anyway.